Hey there everybody, Fox 35 Storm Team Meteorologist Noah Bergren here. Thanks for checking out the tropical update tonight on our website, through our apps, and also on our YouTube channel. Appreciate you on this 8th of August, 2024. All right, quickly in the tropics, we got the final forecast for the seasonal outlook from the folks at Colorado State within the last few days, and their forecast is more or less unchanged. 23 named storms, 12 hurricanes, and 6 majors. For perspective, their July forecast was 25, 12, 6, and the June forecast was 23, 11, and 5. Now, this August forecast includes what we've already had, which we've had Alberto, Beryl, Chris, and now Debbie. So 4 storms we've had, so 19 more is what the expectation is from the folks at Colorado State. Out in the tropics right now, a big plume of dust. Common misconception in the world of weather when you hear some forecasters on TV or online say dust completely inhibits, it doesn't completely inhibit tropical formation. The last few weeks were a great example. It's something called the MJO phase, the Madden-Julian oscillation, where if the air over the Atlantic is broadly sinking or rising, that it plays as much or even slightly more of a role than just the dust. I'm saying that because I'm trying to educate you and tell you how things are. It's not just the dust. That's a little bit misrepresentative. It's not the only reason why things stay quiet. It can be a large part of it, but it's not the only reason by a large stretch. But that said, there is a decent plume of it out there now, but that's going to kind of move out next week, and that will allow a very favorable window for a tropical system. As of tonight, a medium 50% chance of development in this orange going through the Antilles and then towards Puerto Rico heading into next week. This is the 7-day probability here. I do think personally a tropical storm or hurricane is likely. The next name up is Ernesto, and if it did hit the U.S., it would probably be next weekend into early of the following week. So we're talking 8 to 11 days from now. If notice I put the asterisk there, if it hit the United States, which is far from a guarantee at this point. So likely Ernesto will have a very ripe environment next week. A hurricane, in my opinion, seems likely, possible for a major hurricane. We will see, though. And the entire eastern U.S. should monitor its progress closely. An update now on the naming list: Ernesto, Francine, and Gordon, the next names up for this year. So let's get into it a little bit more. Here's the European ensemble. This is a blend of 50 different versions of the European model. So instead of showing one model, the Euro, which most of you have probably heard of, if not, it's one of our main computer models, we tweak it and run it 50 different times and take the average. That's what this is. Think of it like polling 50 people, but not 50 people of the same opinion. 50 people of very different backgrounds and beliefs, ages and origins and the whole 9 yards, and taking the mean of all of that and putting it together. So it's a very good tool to use at long ranges with weather forecasting. And these are the probabilities of a tropical system forming towards the end of next week. I believe this is technically, you see the date there, Thursday night into Friday of next week. Notice there's 3 waves. What likely will be Ernesto, another one here, and then another one coming off the coast of Africa. These have 30 and 20% odds right now, according to your ensemble. But notice this one here for Ernesto. Notice how big the track is. Basically, this system will follow. If it's stronger sooner, more likely a recurve. If it's slower and weaker to develop, more likely it travels closer to the U.S. That's just an age-old adage in forecasting these things. But notice the spread here is large. Some of the guidance tries to curve it really fast. Some is more into the Bahamas towards Florida. We will see. I think personally a strike to Florida is unlikely given the setup, and I'll explain to you why. Let me show you the models. So we're talking about Tuesday into Wednesday, a tropical depression or a storm getting going and maybe impacting the Antilles going towards Puerto Rico. This is August 13th. So this would be a developing system at this point, depression to storm. And then once it gets north, then we're off to the races with maybe a hurricane towards Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Now, here's the Euro. Notice it's got a hurricane there, pretty clear to see. But these are the winds aloft. I've plotted the wind at 500 millibars, so 20,000 feet. And I want you to notice this big yoink, yoink, yoink right there. Notice this ridge and then trough. And that's how it goes down and then across. Whenever you have a trough like this in the eastern U.S., that makes it really hard to get a hurricane to come into Florida from that position. Not possible, but difficult. And notice why, because this is the steering flow. This is the jet stream, basically. Notice it comes like that. It's moving like this. So if the jet stream's moving like this, the hurricane's not going to go into Florida. It's going to follow that pattern, if that makes sense. But this is a setup where you can get it thrown into the Carolinas or even up towards the northeast New England or Nova Scotia, or it's entirely possible it recurves. But then again, this is all an educated guess because the thing hasn't formed yet. Once it forms, it'll become much clearer how the steering flow will relate to it. But the other thing is, too, all of the models have this trough in a different position, in a different magnitude towards the end of next week. So there's the Euro. Here's the GFS. Pretty good consistency. Tropical storm winding up by about Tuesday, probably Tuesday morning. So as soon as Monday, we should have later this weekend, we should have an invest officially tagged. Then we'll get the tropical models running on it from the Hurricane Center. Then it crosses Puerto Rico, and then from there, the GFS, interestingly, I'll just let this play so you can see, it digs this trough a lot deeper towards Florida, and then kind of captures what would be Hurricane Ernesto, and New England, got to watch it, Nova Scotia, but I'm not going to speculate, and I'm certainly not going to play this out any further. But the point is, the whole eastern U.S. should watch closely. That's number one. Number two, it's way too early to rule out any scenario, and it's way too early to be worked up, take action, get scared, or cancel your travel plans. It's way too early for any of that. None of that is needed, and I'm certainly not telling you to do any of that. But the entire eastern seaboard should watch this closely. A couple of scenarios, I think it's really down to three. A complete recurve and miss of all landmass would be probably like scenario one. Scenario two would be maybe something that tries to clip the northeast. Scenario three would be somewhere in the southeast. But I'm going to go back to the Euro quickly and show this to you because this is a much easier way to interpret what I'm talking about. Now, in terms of Florida or any of the Gulf, you might be saying, okay, you told me it's unlikely. How could that change? Well, you'd have to have this trough change drastically. See this trough right here? 04, Gene, when it hit southeast Florida, came up to Orlando. Gene was a strong hurricane, 04 like that. You need a ridge up here, high pressure. The air has to flow the opposite way, like this. That's how you get a storm to landfall the east coast of Florida, like Andrew, Gene, and go down the list. When you have a trough like this, generally you're talking about not a Florida storm, just because the air up here is blowing like this. It's not going to go, it physically can't. It's going to get captured by that trough and either pushed out to sea, or it's going to get boomeranged or thrown into the mid-Atlantic, New England, or Nova Scotia somewhere. So if you're in Florida or the Gulf Coast, I'm certainly not going to rule it out because this trough could change in the days to come. But at this point, it would appear rather unlikely for this to pose any direct impact as we head into next week. Keep it here. We'll have updates daily on air and online. It's going to get pretty busy over the next few days. Appreciate you watching. Again, follow me on social and follow us on Fox 35 if you're in Central Florida. I'm Storm Team Meteorologist Noah Bergren.